Two families from opposite sides of the world's most bitter conflict stood peacefully in Buckingham Palace Gardens until a red-capped stranger began planting seeds of hatred between them. Neither the Iranian nor Israeli families knew they were being manipulated, but the royal guard watching it all unfold was about to deliver a lesson that would restore faith in human decency and prove that peace is possible anywhere, even here. Before we witness how one guard's wisdom turned a moment of manufactured hatred into a lesson about our shared humanity, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, especially if you're from the Middle East, because sometimes the most important battles for peace happen in the most unexpected places. The June morning at Buckingham Palace carried an unusual weight, with tensions escalating between Iran and Israel making global headlines daily. The last thing anyone expected was for those distant conflicts to manifest in the heart of London. But that's exactly what happened when three very different groups converged in the Palace Gardens, each carrying their own piece of a story that would soon intertwine in ways none of them could imagine. Royal Guard Marcus Thompson stood at his ceremonial post, his 6 years of service having taught him to read crowds like a book. At 29, he'd served tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, seen how quickly peaceful situations could explode, and learned that the deadliest conflicts often began with whispered words rather than thrown stones. Near the famous Victoria Memorial, the Hosseini family from Tehran was capturing memories of their first visit to London. Dr. Reza Hosseini, a university professor, had brought his wife Zara and their 12-year-old daughter Yasmin on this dream vacation, saving for years to afford the trip. Zara adjusted her elegant hijab against the morning breeze while Yasmin practiced her English with other tourists, her face bright with the wonder of a child seeing the world beyond her homeland. 50 meters away, the Goldstein family from Tel Aviv was experiencing their own moment of awe. Rabbi David Goldstein, visiting London for an interfaith conference, had brought his wife Sarah and their 10-year-old son Daniel to see the palace. David's yarmulke and prayer shawl bag marked him clearly as an observant Jew, while Sarah's warm smile and gentle corrections of Daniel's excited chatter in Hebrew painted a picture of a family simply enjoying their travels. Both families moved through the gardens peacefully, their paths occasionally crossing as tourists do, with polite nods and shared smiles over their children's enthusiasm. Neither paid much attention to the third figure, watching them both with calculating eyes. Brad Stevens, 43, from Oklahoma, stood out like a caricature of American stereotypes. His red MAGA cap, oversized t-shirt featuring an American eagle, and loud commentary to his phone camera made it clear he wasn't just any tourist. Stevens had built a social media following through provocative content that thrived on controversy, and today he'd spotted an opportunity too perfect to pass up. "Folks, you won't believe what I'm seeing here at Buckingham Palace," he whispered into his phone. "We got ourselves a real-life Middle East situation developing. Time to see if these people can behave civilized when they're face-to-face." Stevens pocketed his phone and approached the Hosseini family first, his strategy already forming. "Excuse me," he said with exaggerated friendliness. "Couldn't help but notice you folks are from Iran. Beautiful country. Terrible what's happening over there right now." Dr. Hosseini nodded politely. "Thank you for your concern. We're just here to enjoy London with our daughter." "Oh, absolutely, absolutely," Stevens continued, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "Just, you might want to be careful around here. I saw those Israeli folks over there." He gestured toward the Goldsteins, and they were making some pretty harsh comments about Iranian tourists. Something about not feeling safe with them around. Just thought you should know. Zara's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "What kind of comments?" "Well, I probably shouldn't repeat it," Stevens said with false reluctance. "But they were saying something about how Iranian families shouldn't be allowed in places like this during wartime. Called it a security risk. Real ugly stuff." Marcus Thompson watched this exchange with growing unease. From his position, he could see Stevens' body language, the practiced manipulation, the way he glanced between the families like a predator sizing up prey. But protocol demanded he remain at his post unless direct action was required. Stevens wasn't finished. He walked over to the Goldstein family next, his approach identical, but his story reversed. "Rabbi, right? Thought so. Listen, I feel like I should give you a heads up. That Iranian family over there? He nodded toward the Hosseinis. "They've been making some pretty concerning statements about Jewish tourists. Something about how Israelis shouldn't feel welcome here while their country is murdering innocent Iranians." Rabbi Goldstein's expression shifted from polite interest to concern. "Are you certain? They seemed quite pleasant when we passed earlier." Feigning shock wholesale. "I know, right? That's what makes it so disturbing. They're putting on this friendly face but then talking about how Jewish families like yours are the real terrorists. Their words, not mine. Just thought you should be aware, especially with your son here." The poison was planted. Stevens retreated to a nearby bench, pulling out his phone to record what he clearly expected would be an explosive confrontation between two families who moments before had been living symbols of peaceful coexistence. The effect was almost immediate. Dr. Hosseini found himself watching the Goldstein family with new suspicion, seeing threat where before he'd seen nothing but another family enjoying London. Rabbi Goldstein, meanwhile, began steering his family away from the Hosseinis, his protective instincts triggered by Stevens's fabricated warnings. When 12-year-old Yasmin Hosseini accidentally kicked her ball near 10-year-old Daniel Goldstein, what should have been a simple childhood interaction became charged with imagined significance.
"Sorry,"
Yasmin called out in English, running to retrieve her ball. Daniel, remembering his father's sudden change in demeanor, stepped back nervously, instead of smiling as he might have earlier. Dr. Hosseini, interpreting the boy's reaction through Stevens's poisonous lens, approached with unexpected sternness. "Is there a problem here?" Rabbi Goldstein, equally influenced by the lies he'd been told, positioned himself protectively in front of his son. "Not at all. We're just trying to enjoy our visit peacefully." The word peacefully carried new weight, implying that the Hosseinis were somehow threatening that peace. "Peacefully?" Dr. Hosseini's voice rose slightly. "Are you suggesting we're not peaceful?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Rabbi Goldstein replied, but his tone was defensive now, wary. Stevens watched from his bench, phone recording, a satisfied smirk playing across his face as two innocent families fell into his trap. Marcus Thompson made a decision that would define not just his career, but his character. "Excuse me, gentlemen," his voice cut through the rising tension as he approached, having left his ceremonial post for the first time in 3 years for reasons other than emergencies. "I couldn't help but notice you seem to be having a misunderstanding." Both families turned toward him, surprised by the intervention. "Officer, we're just—" Dr. Hosseini began. "I know exactly what you're doing," Marcus said gently. "You're both protecting your families from threats that don't exist. And I know this because I've been watching that man over there," he nodded toward Stevens, "manipulate both of you for the last 20 minutes. Stevens's smirk vanished as all eyes turned toward him, narration revealing. "That gentleman approached each of your families separately," Marcus continued, "telling each of you that the other was saying terrible things. I watched him lie to you, Dr. Hosseini, about what this family said, and I watched him lie to you, Rabbi Goldstein, about what that family said. Neither of you said anything offensive about the other. You've been played." The silence that followed was deafening. Both families looked from Marcus to Stevens to each other, the realization of the manipulation slowly dawning.
"But he said—"
Zara began. "He lied," Marcus said simply, "to both of you. You were standing here peacefully, two families from different cultures sharing the same moment of wonder at this beautiful place, until someone decided to turn you into entertainment for his social media followers." Stevens stood up abruptly, phone still recording. "Now wait just a minute, soldier boy. I was just sharing what I observed." "You were manufacturing conflict," Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen real conflict and knew the difference. "You took two peaceful families and tried to turn them into a viral video about Middle Eastern hatred. But the only hatred here came from you." Dr. Hosseini looked at Rabbi Goldstein with new eyes. I apologize. I should not have suspected." "Please," Rabbi Goldstein replied, his own shame evident. "We both fell for it. The fault isn't yours." Little Yasmin, who had been watching the adults with confusion, walked over to Daniel and offered him her ball. "Want to play?" she asked in careful English. Daniel looked up at his father, who nodded with tears in his eyes, and smiled at Yasmin. Yes, please." As the children began to play, their laughter cutting through the tension, Stevens realized his plan had backfired completely. Instead of creating the viral conflict he'd hoped for, he'd inadvertently orchestrated a moment of genuine human connection. "This is ridiculous," Stevens muttered, still filming. "These people are supposed to be enemies. Their countries are at war right now." "Their countries may be in conflict," Marcus said, stepping closer to Stevens. "But these families are not soldiers. They're parents, taking their children to see one of the world's most beautiful palaces. They're doctors and teachers and human beings who have more in common than they have differences." "You're naive," Stevens scoffed. "These people have been killing each other for thousands of years. You can't just—" "I can't what?" Marcus's voice hardened. "I can't point out that a 12-year-old Iranian girl and a 10-year-old Israeli boy are playing together while their parents discover they both love their children more than they hate strangers. I can't observe that when you remove the lies and manipulation, people naturally choose kindness over conflict." Stevens lowered his phone, realizing that continuing to record was only documenting his own failure to incite hatred. Dr. Hosseini approached Rabbi Goldstein tentatively. "Your son, he seems very bright. How old is he?" 10. "Your daughter, she speaks English beautifully. Where did she learn?" "At school in Tehran. She loves languages. She's been practicing for this trip for months." As the parents began to talk, they discovered what Marcus had known from watching them. They were remarkably similar. Both educators, both devoted to their families, both working to give their children broader perspectives on the world. "You know," Dr. Hosseini said quietly, "in Tehran, there are many of us who want peace, who believe our children deserve a world without this endless conflict." "In Tel Aviv, too," Rabbi Goldstein replied. "More than you might think. We pray for peace, not victory. We want our children to grow up in a world where they can play together, like this." They watched as Yasmin taught Daniel a game she'd learned in Iran, while Daniel showed her how to say friend in Hebrew. Stevens, sensing his social media content slipping away, made one last desperate attempt. "This is all very touching, but let's be real here. Your governments are lobbing missiles at each other right now. How can you just ignore that?" Both fathers turned to look at him, and in their eyes was something Stevens hadn't expected: pity. "Sir," Dr. Hosseini said with gentle dignity, "I cannot control what governments do. I can only control how I treat the people I meet. And today, I met a good family. And I," Rabbi Goldstein added, "met a reminder that our children don't inherit hatred naturally. They have to be taught it. Today, they're learning something different." Marcus watched Stevens pack up his phone and storm away, his attempt at creating viral hatred, having instead created something far more powerful, a moment of genuine human connection that transcended the conflicts that seem insurmountable from a distance. The family spent the rest of the morning together, sharing stories, taking photos, and watching their children prove that peace isn't just possible. It's natural when people meet as human beings rather than representatives of their government's policies. As they prepared to part ways, Dr. Hosseini and Rabbi Goldstein exchanged contact information. "Perhaps," Dr. Hosseini said, "our children could continue their friendship online. Show the world that the next generation doesn't have to repeat the mistakes of this one." "I would like that very much," Rabbi Goldstein replied. Marcus returned to his post, his brief intervention having cost him nothing but gained the world a small but powerful reminder that hatred is learned, not inherited, and that peace begins with individual choices to see humanity in each other. Late at evening, Stevens' video did go viral, but not for the reasons he'd intended. Instead of showcasing Middle Eastern hatred, it showed how quickly manufactured conflict could be dissolved by simple truth and human decency. The comment section filled not with anger, but with hope from people around the world, sharing their own stories of finding friendship across supposed enemy lines. Because sometimes the most important diplomatic work isn't done in government buildings, but in palace gardens, where children play together while their parents remember that before they were Iranian or Israeli, American or British, they were simply human beings, trying to create a better world for the people they love. The royal guard, who spoke truth to hatred, received commendations from both Iranian and Israeli diplomatic missions, who called his intervention a masterclass in practical peacemaking. But for Marcus, the real reward was simpler: watching two children play together and knowing that in that moment, peace wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. What do you think about the current conflict between Iran and Israel? Can moments like this change minds and hearts? Or are some divisions too deep? Share your thoughts below, whether you're from the Middle East, America, or anywhere else in this connected world. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in the comments section, where people from all sides can meet as equals, just like in our story.